Okie dokie. Okay. Testing, 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 testing. All right. So, guys, thank you for coming. This is really, really cool. This is my first workshop. So the fact that so many of you signed up and were interested to learn something from me is kind of astounding. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to Cairo and the guys at New for hosting. This space is super duper cool. They do a lot of awesome events. They have co-working hours as well. So if you guys are freelancers or if you work from home, this is an awesome place to come and work and meet people, really chill. So thanks again to New. I think everyone did, but if you didn't, I have a little booklet, kind of cheat sheet of useful Touchdesigner stuff. It's over on the table. I've got some here. Yeah, let's get started. So what is the plan today? I didn't want to do the kind of workshops that I have been going to. I didn't want to recreate what they were doing. I didn't want to do basically just kind of like reenact a tutorial that you could have found online. I wanted to do something that was a bit more honest to the kind of work that you would do when you're using Touchdesigner and all of these different node-based new media programs, which is to just kind of go with the flow, just kind of start kind of iterating and working on stuff, adding to the little network of nodes and make something creative that came from your own brain. So hopefully this works out. The plan is to kind of decide on something together. I think we've got a pretty solid option of something to recreate. And as I kind of work through the process of recreating that particular patch, that particular kind of visual, I'll do my best to tell you what I'm doing and how everything works. I don't plan to kind of teach you how to use Touchdesigner in a way. I plan to teach you how to think about using this kind of software. So let's see if it works. So everything will be improvised. Expect awkward pauses. If I forget how to do something, if I'm thinking about how to do something, expect mistakes. But that's part of the process. Like when you're watching a tutorial on how to use this kind of stuff, people will like fly through it. They'll ignore all the mistakes. They know what they want to create ahead of time, and that's just not how like you actually do things. That's just not how it works. So that being said, like I want you guys to be annoying. I want you guys to put up your hands if you do not understand what I'm doing. If I have glossed over something that you don't understand, I know there's a lot of beginners here. Please put up your hand. Please just shout, like, what are you doing, Luke? I want you guys to be annoying. And then as well, I know there's some pros here. I'm looking specifically at Dan in the back, who goes by Visual Code Poetry on YouTube and everywhere else. If you do know what you're doing and I'm not doing it properly, I want you guys to chime in and tell me what I'm doing wrong and that sort of thing. Because I want this to be like a learning process for everyone, including me. So that's that. I'll be using this for like whiteboarding and stuff too. I guess about me. I have about 6 or 7 years of professional experience as a creative developer. What does that mean? It means developing creatively, I guess. I don't know. I like interactive experiences. I like doing a lot of web development work. My boss is in the room, Max is in the room. I've worked with his company, Reflector Digital, for many years now. We make really interesting websites, and I bring a lot of that experience with these other interesting tools, whether it's web, whether it's Unity, which is used to make games and that sort of thing, to my experience with Touchdesigner. In fact, like, I don't even use Touchdesigner that much, so it's awesome that you guys are here and want to learn from me, even though I don't have many like Touchdesigner projects in my portfolio. But I like to think that my experience with all these different technical, creative tools helps kind of understand how Touchdesigner works, and maybe gives me some extra experience for how to teach it, because there's a lot of like transferable skills as well. So with that out of the way, what do you guys think we should create? This was currently, let me refresh. Right, there's a new one. So this was an awesome post that was submitted by, I'm forgetting your name. Rubia. So I think this is an interesting option. I even scanned the room to get some interesting video footage as well from, I'm forgetting your name as well.
Jenny.
From Jenny over there. So I think that is probably an interesting direction. I've also pulled up some other stuff from my mood board that I think would be reasonable to create. Maybe some things that we can kind of like combine together potentially. But is anything standing out to anyone? What's up?
If you go right, that colorful one, up, right,
This one?
down,
This one.
yeah, left,
This one.
yes.
This one is pretty crazy too. I like this one too. The one thing I like about this specific example here is that it's kind of like flickering between a bunch of different effects. So that might be like a way, like maybe we can like combine some different techniques together. We'll use this as like a baseline, and then if we have time, maybe we can like add more and more effects kind of thing. Is that sounding good to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's get started. What I wanted to do first is not use Touchdesigner, but to use our brains as well. I wanted to kind of like whiteboard kind of what we're seeing in this particular video art piece. So obviously we've got a video and they're doing something to that video. We see like there's like a little cutout of the road, and then there's another little cutout, kind of like almost like a doorway, something opening up. We also see like the video is perfectly cut around the subject of the video too, which is pretty interesting. So let's kind of write that down. I think what's important here is that we need a mask. We need to create the shape of this cutout of the video. So let's kind of write that down. We need to like I'm kind of drawing like the shape, I guess. So one, we need to create a mask. That's what I would call it. And one of the kind of key points with this workshop is that there's a lot of transferable information, a lot of transferable skills from different programs that you could use. So if you are familiar with video editing or motion graphics, these kind of tools you'll often find using masks and kind of this idea of like compositing. That's all stuff that you can definitely do with Touchdesigner. So first of all, we need to make a mask, and I think an interesting key point with that mask is like one part of it needs to kind of like appear. So we need to animate door thing. And then second, we need to figure out how to mask like the person, the subject. Oopsie doopsie. I don't even know what the best way to do that is currently, so maybe we'll kind of tackle that later. I have some ideas, but again, if someone can chime in and if you have any ideas on how to mask the person, maybe we can try out some things for that. Second, there's some interesting effects. There's a weird little box that appears above the person, and it like does some weird kind of glitchy stuff. So let's figure out how to do the glitchy boxes. Glitchy boxes. There's a person, and you like put the little box on it. So we gotta figure out how to do that. And then the next thing is all of like the glitchy other stuff. So I see 3 specific effects in here. No, I see 2 kind of specific effects. So there's one, it'll show up in a second. There's this like pixely kind of thing. So like right there, it's kind of like a matrixy effect. Like Matrix as in like the movie The Matrix with all the like, there's that one effect where like a bunch of text kind of comes down. So we need to do like pixely matrixy kind of thing. We need to figure out how to do that. Pixely matrixy thing. My handwriting is atrocious, I know.
I don't think you're showing.
Thank you. Pixely matrixy thing. With like all the, we need to convert what we're doing into like little gritty pixely stuff. And then the last one, I think this would be kind of the most complicated, but also pretty interesting. We'll see if we can get to it, is when it turns into particles, when it turns into kind of like dust and then blows away. So particle dust stuff. So like that is kind of essentially what we need to do. And then once we have all these different kind of effects, we need to be able to put them together. Put it all together. So that is kind of the plan, I guess. All right, so let's get started. So first of all, I'm gonna open up Touchdesigner. I believe it's already open. And
what are you using for the whiteboard?
it's an app called Concepts on my iPad, and I am on QuickTime for the longest time. You've been able to just kind of like mirror your display, whether it's like an iPhone or iPad. That's just what I'm doing. Okay, so when you first open Touchdesigner, this is basically what you'll see. I've intentionally, just so that you guys can read everything, made it like kind of squished. Like I've turned down the resolution of my laptop. So I'm going to kind of not show certain panels that I don't want to kind of like crowd up my view. So the very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to close this panel here called the palette. I won't get into what that is, but essentially it just contains some kind of pre-built collections of operators, pre-built collections of nodes that can be useful. There's definitely some really interesting things in there. So when you get a chance, take a look at those. But I'm gonna close it. If I ever wanted to reopen it, I could click this button up in the top left corner called Open Palette. But I'm gonna close it. I don't need it right now. The first thing that we decided we wanted to do is we want to create a mask. Oh, I didn't really add one thing. We need to get the video in Touchdesigner as well. But let's work on the mask first, because I know we can kind of do that first and work on the video after. I'm thinking I want to do this in kind of like a semi-advanced sort of way, but it's pretty easy to conceptualize once you get the hang of it. So there's a little page on my booklet called How to Set Up a 3D Render. So one thing I noticed in that, in this kind of thing here, in this art piece, is that we've got kind of like a perspective. We've got like two separate planes. We've got two separate like rectangles, and they have some perspective to them. And in my opinion, the easiest way to do anything with perspective, to do anything with 3 dimensions, is to actually use 3 dimensions. Use the 3D tools that are built into Touchdesigner. And these are probably the most scary collection of tools in Touchdesigner, but hopefully what I do will kind of help you get comfortable with them. So the first thing that I think we should do is try to play around with the 3D tools. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do to create a node in Touchdesigner is press Tab. Another way to do it is to right-click and press Add Operator. Does the exact same thing, but Tab is definitely going to be the best way to do it if you're going to be making a lot of nodes. So there's a page for this on, I think it's the last page of the booklet, but it goes through all the different categories of nodes. In Touchdesigner, they're referred to as operators. So each one kind of does something specific, and if you notice, there's two ones that are specifically designed for doing 3D things. So I'm gonna play around with one of the ones that I know does 3D. It's called Pop. This is an operator type, an operator family type that just got added to Touchdesigner. But for all intents and purposes, all we need it for is like a rectangle of some sort. So one interesting thing you can do when you have this window open is start typing. And turns out if I type RECT, then this rectangle kind of one got highlighted. So let's click it now and add it. Turns out I was way zoomed out, so let me zoom back in. That's just a scroll wheel. So we've got a rectangle, that's cool. So one thing you'll notice that, I don't know if you noticed this, but when I didn't have a node on the network here, on the right side there was nothing there, but now as soon as I've added a node, there's suddenly a bunch of stuff here. And what is this stuff? This is the parameter page for every node. So here you can kind of change different things about the node. It kind of like works like, what kind of works like this? Maybe in like Microsoft Word or whatever, like when you make an image and if you click a button, sometimes a little panel pops up and you can change like the width and the height of that image. This is like kind of like that. I can click on, for example, it says size there. I can change the size and, oh, wow. So every node essentially has a little preview of what you're doing inside of it. So clearly I changed the size from 1 to 0.5 and it made a little shorter, made it a little less wide. So I'm gonna make another node, another rectangle, and let me, because I think in the, oops, different browser. So we've got kind of like one kind of wide one and one even less wide one. So let's do two rectangles, make one maybe 0.7 or so, one 0.5. And then next we need to kind of like orient them like this. So let's see about maybe rotating this one. This one will be like the shorter one. We've got some other parameters here. There's translate. If I change the number here, it moved to the right. So what that's telling me is that we've got like an XY coordinate system. So usually anytime you see like a collection of 3 fields or 2 fields, that's kind of doing something in like 3D or 2D space. So here, we don't necessarily want to like move it to the left or anything. We want to kind of rotate it. So let's kind of play around with these rotations. Looks like small numbers isn't doing anything obvious for me, so maybe it's degrees, which would make it like that. Oh, okay, oops. Okay, I kind of see some movement on this axis, that's good. 90 degrees, it would kind of make sense. Oops, daisy. Suddenly we can't see anything here. That would kind of make sense because we'd be like looking at it straight on. Let's kind of verify that. If I make it 75, okay, yeah. So 90 degrees, that's like flat. That's kind of what we want. How would we verify that is what's happening? Every node has like a little special interactive mode, a view or active mode. If I click that button in the bottom right corner, and for anything that works in 3D, you can kind of look around. So I've just clicked and I'm just clicking, dragging, and I'm kind of looking around. Okay, cool. So now I kind of want to combine these two rectangles together. So I just press tab, and my intuition is kind of looking for something, or maybe like merge or join. So I'm going to type in merge. Okay, so there is a merge node. Let's give that a try. And then here is our first kind of connection. What's up?
Sorry, how were you looking around again?
What's that?
How were you looking around the...
Okay, so I clicked the bottom right corner little star, and then when I clicked on the viewer in the little rectangle inside the node, and now I'm just dragging. So that rotates, and then if I were to right click, then I can pan as well. And yeah, that's kind of how that works. Okay, so first connection, we want to combine nodes together. So you'll notice on the left and right side of most nodes, on every node, I'd say, there's a little cut out little spot here. And there's another one on the other side. So on the left side, we got our inputs. On the right side, we got our outputs. And then on this one, there's like a much bigger one. So it even says this is a multi-input. So this is kind of a node that's designed to have multiple nodes connect to it. So I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna also do the interactive viewer and see what's going on. Okay, interesting. That's not exactly what I want. I want kind of like like an L of some sort. So let's see what we can do about that. I'm gonna click on this one, and there's a translate section here. I'm gonna change the numbers for Y, which I'm pretty sure is up, and make that 0.5. Okay, looks like that's basically what we wanted. And then on the other one, I'm gonna move it. I think it's, in fact, there's a little thingy. I can see there's a little thingy that shows the X, Y, Z here. So we want to move it Z that way. So X, Y, Z, that's probably Z. Let's do 0.5. I think that kind of nailed it. And now we've got our little doorway sort of thing. Okay, so like I say in the section about 3D rendering, you have to start with a pop or a SOP. So we are currently using a pop. So I think we're done. Like we can move on. We can do something. We can start to render this this little bit of geometry we have here. So let's do that. So this process like kind of doesn't make any sense to me, honestly, which is why I made this like big page on how to do it. When you set up a 3D render, you need to have a geometry, you need to have a camera, you need to have a material, you need to have a light, and you need to have a render. And what is super important is that when you're creating the geometry, you need to connect either a pop or a SOP to it. And there's kind of a weird way you have to do it. It doesn't work the same way that I just did with the connection of the node. What I have to do is I need to make a connection from the end of the pop, of the merge one here. and then I need to go to the tab where the geometry is. It's in the comp tab on the left side. And then I need to create a geometry. And then I've done everything right when suddenly there's a connection from one to the other. And the reason I make this like explicitly clear is that like if I were to just press tab and make a geometry and make the node, there is no input into it. So you kind of have to do it this way. I know like basically why it's like this, but for a beginner, like I don't think this is the clearest thing in the world.
There's actually a new function with pop, so you can just create a render simple.
Yeah.
And it has everything in one.
Yeah.
It's
So
under tops.
let's take a look
You
at
just
that.
don't have as much control of the camera, but
So
render simple.
render simple. Let's make a render simple.
And then, so you can't drag it in though, so you have to see the pop in the parameters.
Mhm.
You need to drag it in there. Otherwise, you have to do the same thing you mentioned, where you have to like lead it out and then drop in the render simple.
Yeah.
Or right now, you can just drag it to the pop over there on the right hand side, like that.
Yeah.
So you can do that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But I think for this, it probably makes sense the way that you're.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
wanted to say this.
cool. So this is definitely like a nice little extra thing. What he's talking about is I can drag my my pop onto this network, and now I've got like it rendered out, which is basically what we wanted to do. Can you can't move the camera around though, can you?
You can do like the camera distance and the width.
Yeah.
But yeah, you lose a bit of actually. And you can move the geometry and stuff.
Can you move the
Yeah,
camera?
less control for sure. It's meant to just be like a bit quicker. You don't need all that.
Yeah. So this is definitely like a nice thing to have, but it's not exactly what we need for now. So I'm just gonna put that down there. All right, so we've got a geo. Now we need to make a camera. This one we can just make like regularly. So I just press tab, and I'm clicking camera. I'm gonna put it around here. Next thing we need is a material. That is a matte thing, a matte operator. I'm going to make a constant in this case. This is another thing that like if you've got experience with other tools, specifically if you have any experience with 3D modeling tools, Blender is like a great example. You'd kind of understand what the concept of a material is. So basically they allow you to visualize 3D elements in interesting ways with different shading types. You could like emulate reflectivity of a surface. You could emulate like how it interacts with light and that sort of thing. In this case, I decided to use something that ignores all lighting, all reflectivity altogether. I picked the constant material, which basically just shows your 3D objects as white or whatever color you pick. So that's what that is about. The next thing, in my thing it says I can add a light, but that's only necessary if I am using a material that uses a light. I'm not, so I'm not gonna add a light. And then the last thing I need is a render. So that is a render, that's at top. So I'm gonna add that. And you'll see that some stuff is starting to connect already. One of the things...
Sorry, what's the thing at the bottom?
This guy?
Yes.
So that was a suggestion from, what was your name?
Rob.
From Rob over there. But basically one thing that I noticed about this particular node was that like it didn't allow me to like set the perspective, because I want to kind of like render, I want to show those two planes from an angle.
Yes.
So this didn't let me do that. I just kind of left it there, but I'm gonna delete it. One thing that we're missing, if you look at my little diagram, there should be a line coming from the material, the yellow node, the material, the constant here, and that should be going to the geometry, and it isn't. And the way that we do that is we can do it two different ways in Touchdesigner. We can click and drag it. So I've selected it, it's moving, and I drag it on top. And I can select parm, that's for parameter material. And now it's connected. And that's basically what I wanted to do, but I could do it another way. I just pressed Command Z, I just undid that just to show you a different way. If I click on Geo, if I click on that geometry node that I made, and then I went, a lot of parameter pages have like multiple tabs. If I went to the render page, I could actually just explicitly drag that node to that parameter, or as you can tell, all that did is just typed in the name of the node. So if I instead typed in the name of the node, then it'll make that connection as well. So there are a lot of things, like especially these kind of gray like line connections. Those are connections that are made through the parameters, through the little like fields where you just type in the name, or like all these like little shortcuts that I'm teaching, all this like click and dragging stuff, that is just kind of like making the connection in like a little bit of an easier way. And what we wanted at the end was this render top. So it's purple, that's from this category of operators. This is all of our like visual ones. This is all of our like 2D image and video based operators. So this we'll be able to like combine whatever we get out of the render with the video and do interesting stuff with that. And I find like when I started, I did a lot of stuff with the tops with this specific family, because I had more of like a 2D motion graphics-y kind of background. So usually I find beginners doing like a lot more stuff with the tops. There's lots of really interesting stuff in here. But we're not really like visualizing this. We weren't really visualizing the mask that we wanted. We wanted that like kind of like L-shaped thing. So we need to do some stuff first. We need to kind of like get the perspective. What I really want to do is to kind of manipulate the camera. So I'm going to click that viewer active button and orient the camera in such a way that I get that perspective. And in the parameters, I've got some other interesting things that can kind of help with that. One thing that's interesting, like I want to go to the parameters for the camera, but right now I have the parameters for the render showing. First, I need to turn off the viewer of the camera, click on the viewer, and now I have parameters for the viewer, for the camera available. So I'm gonna look for, I went to the View tab, and if you guys are familiar with cameras, with taking photography, you might be aware of focal length and like how different lenses operate. In 3D, you can kind of change lens behavior as well. You can change the FOV, which stands for field of view, which is essentially equivalent to like focal length. So I'm gonna change the FOV a little bit. Really, I want kind of like a very aggressive perspective. So right now I'm just kind of playing around with the parameters. And maybe that is fine. I mean, we'll have to tweak this once we get the video in, which is a good segue. But now when I look at my render, I've got a nice white mask that we can work with. Sweet. Okay, so that is one checked off for now. Next we need to do video. So for video, there is a couple different ways to do it. I'm pretty sure this is one of them. I think you can just click and drag it in. Yes. Okay, sweet. So we've got a video here. It is automatically playing. That's awesome. Let's try to combine these two nodes together. So the first page on my little handbook, it states a pixel represents one color. A color is 3 numbers. You can do math on numbers. Therefore, you can do math on pixels. So what that means is, like why I say that is because there are a lot of operations that use math terminology when it comes to kind of combining colors together. And that's because you are doing math on the colors. Like I think that is like a pretty fundamental concept when it comes to any like graphics work, any computer graphics work. A pixel can be constructed with like RGB, including alpha as well as like usually the fourth component. Because of that, it's a number. Because of that, you can do things. So let's try one of them. Let's try multiply. What's up?
If I'm following along, can I just use any video?
Any video, yeah. Yeah. If you don't want to use a video, if you just want to like play around with something built into Touchdesigner, probably you know what? Dan, do you know how to pull up like the banana and the?
Oh yeah, do a movie file
Yeah.
in. And that's gonna have your banana.
Yeah, movie file in.
Hit the plus, it's gonna have a bunch of kind of inbuilt videos. And if you go to nature's videos, there's also still counts, a classic one.
Count, yeah. So these are videos and files that are just kind of like in the Touchdesigner like directory essentially, built in. So.
Sorry, how do I switch from the banana to like something else again?
You press the little plus here,
Oh.
and it opens up the file picker. Yeah. Butterfly is also classic. Good? Okay. So multiply. Let's try connecting these two nodes together and see what happens. There we go. One of the next things that I haven't talked about is like different ways to visualize like what you're working on. There's kind of like a handy way to do it. It's to press this blue display button, and then all of a sudden what you're working on will show up in the background. This isn't the end of my network though. Like this is probably like one of the like intermediary steps. So I don't want to display this one necessarily. One thing that when you're watching a lot of tutorials on Touchdesigner, they will like reinforce, make nulls. What is a null? A null is just a node that repeats what is connected to it, and it helps you like organize stuff. So I just clicked and dragged out of this node that I made here, and I'm gonna make a null. This is like what I will use to kind of represent the last node in my scene. I know it's gonna end on a top. So I'm just gonna put this like kind of a little bit to the right, and then I'll turn on the visualizer for that, and then we can work from there basically. we can kind of like add nodes in between, and then we'll always have like a visualization of what we're working on in the background. Okay, so clearly we need to like reorient the camera here. So I'm gonna click on the right and start to move this around a little bit. I'm just, I'm right clicking, I'm holding 2 fingers on my trackpad. What would kind of look good here? I'm kind of curious. Anyone have any ideas of like how I should line this up, or if I should change the shape of this like doorway sort of thing to kind of match this scene better?
I think the same angle.
In the back?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Maybe you could mask out the man, fisherman, and have him kind of like outside of the rectangle, if that makes sense, and then have the background be within the rectangle as if they're like in a doorway.
Yeah. As if like they're in a doorway. Yeah, definitely. I wonder if we can do like kind of a quick and dirty way. Quick and dirty.
I have a
Kind of like that,
question.
and then just have the mask of the man kind of popping out.
Yeah.
So it's
Do you have a question?
On the masking out the guy,
Mhm.
like in the original image, they were able to like put the guy inside the mask.
Yeah.
It looked like there was a different. It almost looked like the video of the man and the dog were a separate asset.
Mhm.
The video in the back was also different,
Mm-hmm.
and then the mask was what was like mediating the two.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm not sure if it was necessarily one video.
I think so. What was your name?
Covenant.
Kobena.
Yeah.
So Kobena's question or like thought was that maybe it was actually 2 different videos. It might have been. I don't know. Honestly, this isn't my art, but my guess is that it is part of the same video, and that this artist is just kind of like masking out what, like some extra 3D scene sort of out of it. So I think we can do it. I'm gonna try like one way. I don't know if it'll work that well, and we'll just move on if it doesn't. I'm sorry. So from the video, one thing I'm noticing is that the man is probably like the darkest thing in the scene. So we should be able to select him and just kind of like just show the darkest part of the scene. There's lots of nodes for that, and this is definitely where I'm gonna be kind of figuring shit out and seeing what works. One guess for, well, I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on what we should pick in the back? Rob? Threshold? Yeah. So let's try out threshold. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely pretty helpful currently. Okay. I'm playing around with this threshold value, and we're getting some black areas, which is helpful. I'm just playing around with them, seeing what I get. Okay, interesting. Let's add this to our little chain and see what it looks like. So I'm gonna add another multiply. I'm just kind of, actually, one interesting thing you can do when you see like a node line like this is insert an operator, and that kind of adds one in the middle. I just right clicked it. I'm gonna add another multiply and connect our little thing like that. That didn't work. Let's see. So sometimes when you're using these compositing nodes, it helps to kind of switch the order. So let's try that. That didn't help either.
There's like a composite top?
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's try that one instead. So there's a different top altogether. I'm going to try that one instead, called composite. And that one has a multi-input as well. And in composite, we have actually kind of all sorts of different kinds of elements. We have, oh, and actually now I'm realizing what we really need to do, which is we need to connect this video to, we need to kind of make another mask with this one. We need to kind of add to that white mask. So I'm gonna visualize that first. Let's try that composite out. I just typed in comp. Connect these two together. And instead of multiply, let's try one of the other ones. So people, some Photoshoppers might be familiar with these words and stuff. We've got basically all of our overlay or our layer styles here. Layer styles, what's it called in Photoshop? I forget. Blending modes. We got our blending modes here. So this is the math that we're talking about. This is all the different operations that we're talking about. They've got nice names, but ultimately they are just functions. They all are just kind of like equations. So I think add will probably get us sort of what we want. So it kind of does. Let's connect that to our multiply instead of what we had. Oops. Okay, so we're kind of getting somewhere, sort of. I think we can do better with this threshold. Clicking it, I'm going to do that. And then maybe in between the threshold, I'm gonna add another one, another very like Photoshop-y sort of node. Let's try level. So like exactly the same as you would do in Photoshop. Change the behavior of the colors and everything. Let's bump up the contrast maybe. No, not really. Is that kind of doing what we want? Sort of. Sort of. All right, well, I mean, I think that might be as good as we get for now. I'm gonna move on. I think this is pretty close. Obviously, like the color of the man is like a little dark, I wanna say. So it's not really like, it's not super highlighted, but I think as far as a workshop sort of thing, that might be as good as we get. If you're looking at like improving this mask, I think I would probably consider using an AI-based tool instead of what I'm doing right now. There are programs around where you can take a video and just segment exactly the subject that you want, and it'll kind of like rotoscope is another word for masking out a subject, out that element. So that might be what I would use instead of what we're doing now, but this is like a quick and dirty way to do it. So this will do the trick for us. The next thing that we decided we wanted to do was glitchy boxes. So let's give that a try. One thing that's kind of bothering me right now about what we're showing here is that there's all these like grid things in the background. again, like if you're familiar with Photoshop, you'll know that that is kind of how a lot of graphics programs represent transparent pixels. So clearly right now we're showing transparent pixels. So what I will do to just kind of make them black, I know this ahead of time, but there's something called RGB key here. And if I connect that to our null at the end, that just basically makes the scene, the transparent pixels black. So then we can work from there, essentially. Oops, easy. Okay, so glitchy boxes. Another way to make rectangles and shapes and stuff in Touchdesigner is to use tops themselves. So there is a rectangle top too. I'm going to make that. By default, it just makes like a square. One thing to know about, I want to say tops specifically, the texture operators specifically, is that a lot of them have a resolution, and this is pretty important for compositing. You want to composite images, you want to like overlay videos and tops together that have the same resolution. So a lot of tutorials will teach you a very like organized way to do this. For now, I'm just gonna type in the resolution that I want. So now we know that this top will output 1280 by 720p resolution, which in fact, if I were to right click on any top and click the info thing, that will actually tell me a lot of interesting information about the top. So I just right clicked on the last node in our network here, and it says it's a 1280 by 720 size already. So that'll be really good for like overlaying these two things together. And then if I click on my rectangle and maybe make it a bit smaller, I'm going to show you a different way to do that. If I click and hold on any of these number parameters, I've got this interesting little thing, and I can kind of shrink. I can use my mouse. I'm dragging left and right now, and make like a specific size thing. I'm gonna make like a little smaller rectangle and kind of place it. I kind of want it like sort of around here to kind of go over the guy. So there's another section here. There's something called center. I know ahead of time that that will move the object too. And let's combine them together with the composite node as well. Let's do that, add both together, and by default it's multiply, but I think an interesting, like if I look at the original, like it does kind of like it shows weirder colors, like an inverted color. So there's definitely some tops that are better for that sort of thing, or blending modes that are better for that sort of thing. Like negate, that's definitely one of them. So we've got our box here, but obviously that box is like animated, and we need to kind of come up with a way to like actually like glitch this box. So let's give that a try. If you look at my glossary as well of how all the different operator families work, one of them is called a chop, and I say used for channels of data, useful for animation and audio. Inputs are usually, and then it trails off, it's a typo. A chop is probably what we're looking for, because we're looking to kind of animate this box right now. So let's look at the chop family and see what we can pick. Anyone have any ideas of a good chop to use here?
LFO?
Yeah, LFO. Why do you think LFO?
It does that going back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. So LFO, that stands for low frequency oscillator. So oscillation, that's like a kind of motion. And this is kind of what a chop looks like. It basically represents visually like number data, and this is the sort of stuff that we can use to animate lots of different stuff. In the parameters, we've got different ways to, there's a couple different kinds of ways that it can be animated. This one, or a sine, it goes -1 to 1. Gaussian does 0 to 1, which could be useful. Triangle goes -1 to 1, but it's like kind of harsher, it's not as smooth, and so on and so forth. So let's try out the Gaussian. We want it to be like super glitchy, so let's pump up the frequency there. So now we've got like kind of a really super duper glitchy kind of thing going on. And let me, I need to figure out a way to fade this box in and out. It looks like this fill alpha parameter here is a good option. So, again, one of the ways to kind of connect stuff together in Touchdesigner is not just the wires that we're connecting between nodes, but it's also like connecting things via parameters. So the easiest way to connect data from a chop to a parameter in another node is to click the viewer active button, like the little star in the right corner of that chop. And then when I hover over a specific channel in that chop and I click and drag it, then I can drag it to wherever I want in another parameter window. And when I let go, I can select either export chop reference or current chop value. I'm looking for chop reference. The other ones would basically just connect the number and it wouldn't be animated. In the back?
Just before we do this, is anybody sensitive to flashing lights?
That's a good one. Yeah. Is anyone sensitive to flashing lights? Okay. So there you go. There's a flashing light. So maybe we turn down the frequency a little bit. So yeah, so that's kind of how you like animate stuff. So you open up the viewer active, you connect it to there, connect it to whatever parameter you want, and yeah. What's up?
Even if you did it like manually and frame by frame, could you sync up the oscillation with his movement?
Yeah, so even if you did it manually and frame by frame, could you sync the oscillation with the hand movement? Yeah. I've never played with it myself, but I'm pretty sure in Touchdesigner there's like a whole timeline system and stuff. So if you're familiar with like DaVinci Resolve or Premiere or whatever, like you can do like keyframe animations. You can kind of do that sort of thing. Usually, like you're gonna have the most flexibility and like you'll do the most interesting stuff when you do like parameter and like all this like generative, when you use like the math-based nodes, like you're gonna have probably the most interesting output in my opinion, but there's definitely like a hand like done approach you can take as well. So there's that. We kind of animated our chop, or we've used this chop to animate the fill, but it's kind of not doing exactly what I want. I only want it to like show up sometimes, and when it's active, I want it to like glitch out a lot. So I wonder if we can find a node that's like, or find a chop that's like, it's 1 and then not 1 for a while, 1 and not 1 for a while. And I think an LFO will probably do that as well. So I'm gonna make another LFO. I'm gonna make the frequency like a lot smaller. I'm gonna change it to Gaussian. And I'm going to run this through another chop. Round. Does anyone know how to round the chop value in the back?
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
Why not square height?
Oh yeah, true. Let's see what was there a square in there?
I think so. Yeah.
Hey, okay.
So now you like change the frequency which will
Mm-hmm.
how frequent they appear.
Good point. Okay, we got square. One thing I'm noticing though is it's -1 and then 1. Let's connect those two things together. Let's multiply. No, math. Let's find the math chop. And let's connect these two chops together. That's not exactly what I want. So you're kind of noticing like one of the fundamental ways that channel operators work. You can have multiple channels in a chop, but really I want to combine these two together. So there's a little thing for that. I want to multiply the channels together. Combine chops? Yeah, okay, combine chops. I want to multiply them together. Did that work? Yeah, it's kind of working. So if I look, so it's positive and then it's negative. It's positive and then negative. But I kind of want it to be 0 and then positive, 0 and then positive. So I think I need to do like a little bit of work on this one. I think I need to change its amplitude to 0.5. So now it's positive 0.5, negative 0.5, and then change the offset up 0.5. So now it's 0 and then 1, 0 and then 1. Okay, and then now let's connect this to the rectangle fill area. So anytime you see when a parameter is like blue as opposed to white, that means it's being controlled by something else in the network. And if I click it, it's suddenly showing kind of like some code that's related to how it's working. So you'll notice like when I clicked and dragged it on, that's actually what the parameter got changed to. It changed to this like light blue thing, and it's a bunch of like brackets and names and stuff. And you might notice as well that those brackets and names and stuff, those are the names of some of the operators that we were just using. And we could click and drag and do the same thing that we were doing before, but we can also just rename this code. We can edit this this stuff in here to kind of reference the node that we want to refer to now, math. So op LFO 1, that's what we were referring to before. We want to refer to the math 1 node instead. And we want to refer to the chan1 channel. So the kind of syntax for how we refer to chop channels is this op bracket, the name, square bracket, the name of the channel thing. And on the last page as well, there's a little QR code. That is for a page on the Touchdesigner wiki for like all of the different ways that you can kind of refer to nodes by code. There's like a specific syntax for it. And you can kind of do math in this code as well. But if I press enter, now we basically got what we're looking for. So we got it. So it's on sometimes, and then it's flashing when it is on. Another thing, yeah. So, I mean, we could kind of go even further. We can get some more chops that kind of sync up with the video and get that so that it moves the box to the left a little bit. And you could basically use the same strategies that we just did for animating the flashing to do that. But I'm going to move on just because we are running out of time. So the next thing is to kind of do like a pixely. So right now we've got the mask, we've got the video, we've got our little glitchy boxes, and we want to do our pixely matrixy kind of thing. So let's think about how we want to do that. So I was mentioning before that like videos in Touchdesigner have like a resolution associated with them. And one of the easiest ways to get kind of like a pixely effect is actually just to turn down the resolution of a video. That'll basically automatically make it pixely. So let's try that. Let's make a note out of what we're currently working on here. And let's find, I want to resize the video. I just typed in RE resolution, that probably works. Let's give that a try. Not exactly what I was looking for, but that kind of brings me to another thing that I wanted to show you guys. One thing that I think all beginners should know about Touchdesigner is there's a really super helpful menu, and that's called the operator snippets menu. It's also mentioned in my little guide. If I right click on any node, I can click on operator snippets. And that opens up this crazy view. It's a shame that it's like not really showing very well on the screen. Let's see if I can change the panel size. Dan, do you know if I can like zoom in here, make it like a little more visible?
I don't know how to zoom on the actual panel to look at the original.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame. Anyways, it's gonna be hard to like make out what this text says, and that kind of sucks. But over here, we can basically click on any of the operators on any of the component types and find some examples for how they work. So I'm gonna click on resolution and see how that is supposed to be used. Let's see. Click on resolution, there's some text here that kind of describes how it works. There's a couple different examples. So this example brings the resolution down a quarter of its original value. So we got one movie in here, and then here. Okay, so output resolution quarter. That is helpful. Okay, so actually, you know what? I think we could probably, instead of quarter, we could click on use input and still use this node. And let's click on the other ones. Two images are the same. It is only the viewers that are set differently. The second top has its viewer smoothness set to map. Okay, so there's some concept of like smoothness on the output video, so that's helpful. Let's keep working with this. Yeah?
Was that describing what your project was doing in real time? When you went to the operators snippet?
So this is describing this specific area here. So if I click on any of these operators, each of these little items here, that represents an example describing the operator. This isn't my scene. This is like a scene that Touchdesigner's developers have like basically laid out for all of these operators, but they are like live. So you can click them almost exactly like you would if you were doing it yourself. And it's kind of in its own little like Touchdesigner window here.
Can it describe your scene specifically though?
It can't describe your scene specifically. No, it's describing the examples itself. But again, they are like very useful. And like another like little tip here is, I didn't go through it yet, but you can like click and you can, I think you hold down Shift, you can select multiple nodes the same way that you would if you were like selecting a bunch of words in Google Docs or whatever. And you can right click and copy, and then you can paste those nodes into your network as well and use them exactly how they're set up in the operator snippets. So again, super helpful. So resolution, I'm gonna go to the common tab, which is what they were working on. And I'm gonna do custom resolution, and I'm gonna change that to like 10 by 10 or something. And that's making this like really blurry mess. That's not exactly what I want. Okay. And if I click on input smoothness, there's another option here called nearest pixel. That's kind of what I'm looking for. This is basically what I want. I want like a pixely kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'll do. I'm gonna maybe make it a little more, a few more pixels, maybe 30. Maybe I want more pixels vertically than I want horizontally, so X, Y. So that's looking a little better. And I kind of want to like the example, I want to like switch between like pixely mode and not pixely mode. But first, before I do anything, if I look at the info for this example, like clearly it's 40 by 20 pixels. I do want you can only like composite the same resolution of top together. So I need to like bring this back up. One node that I know for that is called the fit node. It says at the bottom, the fit top resizes its input to the resolution set on the common page using the method specified in the fit parameter menu. So let's use that. Common page, I'm gonna set that to 1280 by 720. That's the resolution we were working with. It's kind of not like sharp like I wanted. So we want to switch input smoothness to nearest pixel. Let me verify that this is actually 1280 by 720. It is perfect. And I'm gonna do some funky color stuff to this as well. From other programs, my favorite way to do funky color stuff is to use a gradient, and to use that gradient to control the colors of the visuals by like the brightness of the image. And there's definitely a way to do that in Touchdesigner. First, the easiest way to make a gradient is to use a ramp node. A ramp or a color ramp is just another word for a gradient. And we've got like kind of a gradient maker here. I can kind of like set different steps and change the colors. If I click one of the little steps here, how visible is that? And start playing with the colors. This is hue, saturation, value. Kind of go crazy with the colors. And maybe make that one pink. I've got my gradient here, and then the next node that I want is, I've done this before, so I already know, but I'm looking for a lookup. And in my little handbook, I have a page about maps. So you'll see this kind of word used a lot throughout like graphics programs, but a map is kind of like the same sort of word. You kind of know a map as like a map to a place, like it's kind of tells you how to get from one place to another kind of thing. Same sort of thinking. A map kind of lets you look up a place and that sort of thing. Like basically all of these operators are maps, and they can be used to remap values from one to another. So it's kind of like a word that you'll see used a lot. So we are using this lookup value. We need to add the source image and then the ramp into the next node, and then check this out. We've got like kind of crazy pixely colors going on. If we change the values, if we like move around the gradients, it's gonna change how the colors are mapped here. And then we want to switch between like the pixely colory kind of stuff and what we already have kind of going on. So turns out there is a node called switch as well. So a switch top is a multi-input operator which lets you switch which input is passed through using the input parameter. Let's add a switch, connect our first one. I'm going to connect the output to our null so we can make sure we can see it. And then our lookup to the other one. Nothing's happening right now. So if I click on switch, go to the parameters page and change the index. If I change it to 1, suddenly it switches. So let's kind of automate this process. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to copy this chop here that was already going from 0 to 1. I'm going to copy this, Command C, Control C on Windows, and paste it over here. And I'm going to do that fancy trick where I go to the interactive viewer on the LFO and, I wanted to connect it to the switch. And the viewer active on the LFO, and then connect it to the index chop reference. So now it should flick between pixely and not pixely. I can change the frequency. And I can do all that fancy math stuff that I was doing before, where like maybe I have one long LFO that I can combine with this one, and then it happens even less often and that sort of thing. Let me just do that, why not? Command C, Command V, this one that I have here. I will add math. I will add these two together. I will make sure the combine chops is on, and change the frequency on one of them to be super low. Yeah, so now it's like hardly ever happening, and then I'll reconnect it. Oops, I need to go to the viewer active. Oops. So now it only happens like kind of sometimes based on how these two LFOs are connected to each other. All right, so that is our pixely matrixy kind of thing. And we kind of did put it all together in a way as well. We didn't really get to particle dust stuff, but that is like crazy. It was a little bit intermediate anyways. But because we are at 7:55, I think this is like pretty much about as good as we can get. But does anyone have any questions or last minute additions for this project? What do you think? In the back?
Can we get this file,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, for sure. I'll make sure to email it out and stuff. Yep.
I was wondering, if you go back to the ramp,
Mm-hmm.
can you play around with the phase?
Definitely. Yeah. That's one of my favorite things to do, actually. So there's a phase parameter here. You can kind of like change the. You can kind of make the ramp kind of animate like this. So one thing I can do is I can make a speed chop. So this is just something, if I make sure the speed is more than 0, it'll just kind of like go up forever kind of thing. I can connect this one to phase, for example, and now this this ramp is just like always moving. And you'll see if I just like look at how the colors are working on this side, like it's just always changing color. So that's kind of fun too. So yeah, any other questions?
When you make it into a movie, how do you organize such as like each effect is showing up at a certain point in time, so it's more orchestrated, that's like more control?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how would I like be a bit more controlled about how I have all these things showing up?
Yeah.
I could be a bit more deliberate with my math here, and kind of make sure things kind of line up a lot more nicely. Another thing is that the video, like the input video, there's a way to get info about like the length of the video and that sort of thing. And that, I think I do it like this. Yes, so I'll just repeat that. I made an info chop, clicked and made it empty or not connected to anything. I clicked and dragged the video top on top of it, and now all of a sudden I've got a bunch of interesting info about the video. So for example, the file size, this one's interesting and particularly useful for animations. This is a fraction of 0 to 1 for the length of the video. So that is a parameter that would be really useful for like lining up your other parameters with. It has, I think the length is in here, so that's the amount of frames. So that would be particularly useful. And then like I was mentioning, I've never played with it, but there's like timeline capabilities in Touchdesigner, which you can use to like explicitly like animate things on a timeline, kind of like you would with like Premiere and that sort of thing. So you could kind of you could be more deliberate that way. In the back?
Yeah, so on the topic of like control and like organization, I'm just curious about, now that we have this all laid out with all these nodes, is there an intuitive way to kind of group certain nodes to kind of organize it? So something similar to like Blender, where if you have like a lot of nodes going on, all things connected, you can actually group them together so that it's a little easier to navigate. Is there something similar to that in Touchdesigner?
Yeah.
You have a lot of nodes going on.
Definitely, yeah. So the question is like, is there an intuitive way to group nodes together? And so, I was pretty deliberate in basically making this the most disorganized network I could, just to show you that is like how I would be setting up these networks of nodes when I'm just kind of experimenting and trying to do something in the first place. One tip that you'll see in a lot of like tutorials, if you're watching tutorials about Touchdesigner, is that they will make it very clear that you should be using nulls as much as possible. And again, a null is just kind of a way to take a node and make it like duplicate it in a way and have like a consistent reference. So you might remember when I like first set this rectangle up, and the way that it flashed, I had to like break the connection and reconnect it. If I was doing it in a bit more of an organized way, I would have created a null off of this, maybe the first LFO that I made, and then connected that instead to here. And if I, for example, deleted this connection, then that reference still is connected properly. So that would probably be like the first tip for organization, is to start considering using these like null operators, and there's one for every family. There's like a null top, a null pop, a null whatever. Those are like definitely ways to organize things. Another one is just pure, like, you take your nodes and you just kind of like organize them in a nice, pleasing, like OCD kind of way, and just like if that makes your brain happy, that's one way to organize things for sure. You can select multiple ones and kind of do that sort of thing. Oops. And then another one is, and I can't exactly remember how to do this. If I select multiple ones, I can. Dan, do you remember how to make like a folder kind of groupings and stuff?
If you select a bunch, you can right click.
Yeah.
And say on the background, importantly.
Yeah.
And say collapse selected towards the bottom.
Collapse selected. Okay, so that's definitely.
And it's going to make a component. What you can also do if you want to just have it organized is you can select everything, right click on the background, and go down to layout under display. And then you have a bunch of options under display.
Under display, yep.
You have a bunch of options, so you could like lay out on a grid, for example. It's going to, you select
everything.
And then it's going to, put it in a grid. There's lots of, that's maybe not the most readable. But you can do like layout all, and it's going to kind of lay it out, and depending how complicated your network is, it might make it easier to read, it might not. So I kind of go the route of just like being a bit anal and just like arranging everything nicely. Once I finish doing stuff.
Yeah, so the layout all, if I right click on the background and select all the nodes that I want to kind of organize nicely, there's some ways to kind of like align things to grid automatically.
Another really nice one that's built in is if you see at the top, you can like add comments and boxes that will like essentially like group your operators. So if you right clicked again, you see add comment, so you can use the key commands or just add them there. You can write comments, but if you have a network box, it's like a box you can wrap around a bunch of nodes, and then those nodes are kind of within that box. If you move the box, the nodes will move.
That's like in Blender, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, try making under add comment, do network box, and then you can move that over a bunch of nodes, and then those nodes are kind of tied to it, and that's super helpful. You can color it, make it look nice.
Yeah, and then now they're kind of like connected to it.
Yeah, so if you move the gray bar at the top, they should all kind of be tied to that.
Yeah, and I don't even have them selected necessarily. Change the size. How do you change the color?
Just with the network box select, just click a color that you like in the bottom left palette. You can throw it up there first. Do you see the color bar on the left of the screen? You have like a bunch of.
Oh yeah, there. These guys. Then you can double click to name it.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely ways to organize it. I tend to be a little less organized than some. Yeah. Other questions? We're 5 over. What's up?
When you're like, because you're using chops to control certain, to animate what other ways, other than math chop, do you change the signal, from like fraction to instead of just use like 1, 2, 3 instead of like 0.00? Like,
Mhm.
do you do that like to like control the
Yeah.
granularity of the?
So the question is, right now, like I use this, I use chops to animate stuff, and I use math to kind of control how those chops were expressed. Are there other ways? And certainly, there's plenty. There's lots of different ways. There's like limits is something that we could consider using. I didn't play with any of the inputs or anything like that either, but there's certainly lots of inputs as well. There's like a mouse in chop. If I look at that, whoops. So this is a chop that has the position of the mouse. If I connect that to limit, quantize, for example, ceiling. So right now, the values of the mouse are kind of clamped to 0.1 increments. That's kind of what quantizing is like. Rounding, I guess, another way of saying rounding. So there's certainly like lots of different ways to control the numbers that come out of a chop to do what you want. But math is probably one of the more useful ones, honestly.
That's cool. Like you use the mouse to have like that controllable.
Yeah, for sure.
Different way of controlling.
Some of you might be familiar with like all these crazy like hand tracking Touchdesigner experiments that people are doing online. That is from, there's a plugin you can download, and the technology that is used is called MediaPipe. So if you look up like MediaPipe Touchdesigner, you'll get like a series of helpful like little snippets of Touchdesigner code, TOX files that you can drop in. I'm dropping in the MediaPipe one. That's probably gonna break stuff. And I'm gonna drop in the hand tracking one. And you'll notice that I'm just kind of blasting through this because I'm not really explaining it here, but got my hands, and if I bust out instance data to a null, you'll notice that the hands are getting kind of output as chops. So like a lot of inputs in Touchdesigner are chops. You can use this info here as to animate stuff as well. So maybe in another session I'll go through MediaPipe, but I know there's been a couple other workshops in Toronto that have talked about this. So anyways, I think that probably concludes. I'm 10 minutes over, people are leaving. Take care. Again, thank you to New. Come check out this space. Thank you all for coming. I hope you learned something. Can't teach everything in an hour and a half, but I try my best. I'll probably send out a feedback form as well. I'd love to hear some feedback and to improve future sessions. I've got everything recorded here, so I'll send the recording. I'll send the I'll clean up this file and share it with you guys as well. Obviously, this isn't like exactly what we sought out to recreate, but it's sort of close. And I think that's kind of the spirit of the program. You can kind of play with it and do something on your own, and maybe you're trying to recreate something, maybe you're trying to go beyond it. Yeah, that's how you think That's how you think with nodes, my friends.